All right, film geeks, today we're talking about The Blind, as in the Duck Blind, Duck Dynasty, the Robertson family. So let's talk about it. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of All Right, Let's Talk About It. My name is Savannah. I am your host. I do film reviews and film industry commentary. Look, if I sound a little stuffy and tired, it's because I am. I am getting past a sinus infection. I have two sinus infections every year. I call them my biannual sinus infections, and they happen around the same time every year when the seasons change from winter to spring and then summer to fall. Winter to spring is usually the worst for me because I'm very dizzy and lightheaded for no reason, and it's so frustrating and so annoying, and it comes out of nowhere sometimes. But in the summer to spring season, I just have a really bad headache. And it's awful and it sucks and I can't function and I'm just living on Sudafed and ibuprofen. But this year, the headache wasn't so bad. It was just a dull ache in, the normal sinus infection kind of place, but it was enough to just kind of weigh me down. So, little frustrated. I don't like resting. I don't like relaxing. I took a whole nap yesterday. So, very annoyed. I'm not a resting kind of girl. So, when I had COVID, I've talked a bit about it on this channel, but when I had COVID in July, I slept so much and hated every second of it. I am not a kind of girl who likes to rest. So if I sound a little off, that's why. I'm recovering. And I can't wait. So I'm not going to keep y'all super long because as soon as I'm done recording this, I'm going to take care of my body, take a shower, wash my face, brush my teeth. I don't do anything before I record a podcast because once if I do anything that would make me comfortable, it's not going to get done. So yeah, I'm whole stank recording this. I don't do anything. The only thing I might do is take a walk or go for a run. But I'll come back and I'll definitely shower after that, but I won't eat. But considering I didn't get up and walk this morning, we're just holding off all the things that would make me comfortable and peaceful until this is done. Because if I do before, it won't get done. Once I'm comfortable, that's it. That's it. So we're talking about The Blind. So this movie was directed by Andrew Hyatt, stars Aaron Von Adrian as Phil Robertson and Amelia Eve as Kay Robertson. So this is about Phil Robertson, who is the patriarch of the Robertson family, aka Duck Commander, Buck Commander, Duck Dynasty, a reality show that was on A&E several years ago. And hilarious. I think the show is on Hulu right now. You can access it on Hulu. So funny. It's hilarious. It's ridiculous. Just, rich rednecks. Essentially, they're millionaires and they started from nothing, built the business from nothing, and have been able to maintain it and keep it in the family. It's a beautiful thing. At least I think so. And this is Phil Robertson's story. Kind of, I guess you could say, kind of the foundational story for the family. This is where it all started, was his, journey to Jesus in a sense. This is his testimony. So this movie is basically one large flashback, and we start off in The Blind. So the movie's called The Blind, right? AKA The Duck Blind. And this is what I know about duck blinds. And I don't know a whole lot because I've never been hunting. I only know what I've seen on TV, what I've seen in pictures, is that with duck hunting, you have to be quiet. And this is true in most hunting scenarios. Obviously, I think all of them. But the thing with um, duck hunting is you have to be quiet, hidden, but yet you're lit up. You're in a very bright place typically because you have to be out where you can see the ducks flying. So the sun is out. Obviously, the sun is shining down on you, but you have to still remain hidden. You're in a hidden place, but very visible, which is very much the Christian journey in a sense. So I thought it was an interesting little metaphor. But we start off in West Monroe in 1985. Phil Robertson and his friend Big Al. And Big Al called him up and asked him, how he was able to turn his life around. And that's where our story begins. So yeah, this is one large flashback. Him talking about his beginnings as a young boy, very, very poor, the oldest of four. His father worked in the oil field, so he was gone a lot. And his mom was mentally ill and had episodes, so she was frequently institutionalized. So he spent a good chunk of his time raising his younger siblings. But as it turns out, he knew how to play football, and that football skill got him places, got him through high school, got him into college. And in between all of this, he fell in love with Kay Caraway, whose father owned the general store. So to him, they were rich. They fell in love and got married, had their first child before he even, I think, graduated. I think she was still in high school when she was pregnant, but they were married. And they ended up having three more boys within 10 years, Alan, Jace, and Willie. And it's about around that 10-year mark where things took an absolute turn, maybe even before that. But he ended up taking up a teaching job, and that's where he meets, Big Al for the first time. And he invites him out for a drink. Hey, let's celebrate your first day. Let's have a drink. And he's like, sure, why not one drink? It was that one drink that really just kind of set the course for the next couple of years of his life of just alcoholism, depravity, depression, extramarital affairs. And got to a point where it was so bad for him that he ended up kicking out his wife and children. She went to go stay with her sister-in-law, so his younger sister. And that's where things started to turn around for her. She ended up meeting with the pastor, the same pastor who actually walked into a bar that Al and Kay owned, trying to preach a good message to him. What courage that pastor must have had walking into an unfriendly and unwelcoming environment with only the message of Jesus to protect him. Well, this same pastor meets up with Kay, and he offers her and her children a place to stay, a property that's kind of owned by the church. Well, that works out. They get the house. She gets a job. She starts taking care of her children while her husband, Phil, is living in a trailer by the river. And he's just drinking his life away. Just belligerent, gone, messy, the messy kind of drunk that you often hear about. I think this story might be very relatable and maybe even, triggering and sobering and humbling for anyone who's been in that situation, who's dealt with addiction in any shape, way, or fashion, in that it starts off cute, it starts off fun, and then it consumes you. It takes over your life and it transforms you. And all of a sudden, you're not even you anymore. You're just the addiction. It completely takes over. But this is true, I think, of any sin that starts off small, it starts out cute, and then it consumes you. This is his testimony. This is his journey from death to life, in a sense. Now, quick disclaimer here, I am a Christian. I've been a Christian since 2006. So I'm going to give you the objective review that I always give you, but I'm also going to be speaking a bit from a Christian perspective. Because this is a Christian film, a lot of my followers and subscribers are Christians. So they're definitely coming to a movie with certain questions in mind, and I hope to answer them. So, objectively speaking, the film is, I think it's solid. It does what it's supposed to do. It's not a masterpiece by any means. The acting is just okay. I think um, Aaron Von Andrian as Phil Robertson is definitely the standout in terms of acting. The young man who plays Cy is hilarious. It's so funny how he's got a lot of his mannerisms down and the way he speaks, very, very fast, the tone, the cadence. Amelia Eve, I felt like was the weakest link here, even though to me she had the most important role. To me, a wife is the most important role. Obviously, you want a husband who is a strong leader in a family, but to me, your family is only as strong as your backbone. And to me, her performance was just a little weak. I felt like it was overdone at times. I felt like she laid the accent on a little too thick. I don't know who did her hair, but that wig was just not giving. But, I mean, she wasn't terrible, though. The acting in and of itself was not terrible. I think the standout here for me in terms of the overall artistry of the film was the cinematography, but I could be a little biased because I do live in Louisiana, and I'm from North Carolina as well. So any movie that's going to be filmed in those two states, I'm gonna think is gorgeous automatically on principle. But there's something about the Louisiana wilderness that I think is just so different and so beautiful. The marsh, the swamp, the river, the cedar trees, like, it's just gorgeous to me. The oak trees, I love Louisiana wildlife. I think it's so beautiful, and I love the way it's captured on film. So think about the last movie I saw that was filmed in Louisiana, Haunted Mansion, which was pieces of that was filmed here in New Orleans. They did an absolutely terrible job of capturing New Orleans, Louisiana in general. Terrible job. This film, I feel like, got it right. And I think they had to get it right because this is a man whose life is hunting, being in the woods, being dirty, being rough, whatnot. So that the forest plays a major role in this story. It being a place where not only he goes to hide, it's a refuge, but it's also the place where he met Jesus. So the cinematography had to be captured right, and I think they did a good job with that. I think the director does a good job himself. The only weak spot here I thought was Amelia Eve as Kay. She wasn't terrible, but I felt like her acting was the weakest out of all of that. But at the same time, I think she did a good job of portraying a wife, a strong, faith filled wife, a wife that kind of has to lead with hope when she can't lead with anything else. So I did think she did well in that respect. Her acting was just a little bit off. Writing wise, I thought this was very well written. I love the structure. I love the story within a story. I think that was the whole point of this because this is a story within a story where this is his testimony. So him sharing his testimony is part of the point. And I think that's supposed to be encouraging to the audience, showing just how powerful your testimony can be to another individual, especially to someone like Big Al and what he's going through in his life at that time. So overall, I'd say the movie is just solid. It's not perfect. It's probably one of the better Christian films I've seen in the last couple of years, and we're gonna talk about that in a hot second. So, I definitely think it's worth your time. However, I don't know if you'll be able to catch it. This movie I know was released for 1 weekend only. I don't know if it'll be available after this week. So, cross your fingers, good luck. If you're able to see it, I hope you're able. I just don't know where to give you direction. With Christian movies, I expect, and I've said this many times before, message heavy, low quality. What I mean by that, message heavy, low quality, is Christian films spend so much time pushing the message. They spend so much time focusing on making sure they get the message right that they don't allow for any nuance or gray. All that matters is making sure the message gets pushed, whatever it is they're trying to say. So everything else kind of falls by the wayside. So even if the message is clear, the acting might suck, the writing sucks, cinematography, direction, all of the things that make a good movie sucks. Sometimes your message is not going to come across as clear as you want it to. Sometimes you go in there saying one thing and you end up saying something else. That's art. That's the nature of art. And Christian filmmakers won't allow themselves to be artists. I said it. Come at me. I really don't care. But that's the problem I have with a lot of Christian movies. You always have the same type of people, very cookie cutter, happy, joyful. Everyone looks all smiley, and then your person who has an attitude or the person that kind of needs a change usually is just over exaggeratedly terrible. It's just they're just unbelievably bad. There isn't really much redemption, and they're painted in such a dark light that when they get to the part where they're a good soul or there's light in them, it's just not all that believable. It's so rushed. They don't allow their characters to have any dimension, but I'm starting to see a bit of change, and I noticed this with Redeeming Love in 2021. The raw vulnerability that we're starting to see in Christian movies. Because if you don't know anything about Redeeming Love, you're probably a man. But Redeeming Love, I think every Christian woman at some point has heard, you should read this book. Oh my God, you would totally love it. But Redeeming Love is about a prostitute named Angel during the California Gold Rush. And she is a prostitute from a very young age. Her mother was a prostitute. Now, what happened with Angel, just going on a tangent, is she was the product of an affair. Her mother had an affair with a married man. She was born. Her father provided for her mother and for her, life of luxury, as long as they stayed out of sight and as long as her mother was available to be with him, but he really didn't have much of a relationship with the child. Many times whenever, he would send gifts to her mother would give the gifts to the child saying, "Oh, look what your daddy got you." Well, this all didn't work out in her favor. Daddy decided to cut them off, and they had to move out of their, luxurious house into kind of a shack, and she had to make ends meet, so she becomes a prostitute. She ends up dying, and now she's following in her mother's footstep, and it was kind of the worst moment for her, obviously, because she's alone, she's with a man whom she thinks she can trust, who takes her somewhere, basically sells her at a very young age, like 8 or 9 years old. And we get to see the redemption in her life, and not just her redemption, her soul's redemption, but also the redemption of sex in her life, which angered a lot of people. and I tried to make the case, but people are very set in their ways, that in order to tell this story properly, we have to see the redemption of sex in her life. So that means sex scenes. There are two very big ones in Redeeming Love, and it's very important for us to see the way sex is transformed in her life when it goes from being something transactional to true beautiful intimacy and love, an expression of love, and not just an expression of a dollar. Does that make sense? That was such a bold take for them. And the movie was just okay. It was very simple, very flat, very sweet. It wasn't perfect. But the director himself wasn't a known Christian director. DJ Caruso, if I'm not mistaken, directed Redeeming Love. He also directed Eagle Eye with Shia LaBeouf and Michelle Monaghan, and Taking Lives with Ethan Hawke and Angelina Jolie. So this was completely out of his realm, but his wife wanted this movie, so he did it. Then we had, Jesus Revolution in the Spring, Nefarious, and not Redeeming Love, but Sound of Freedom. You can kind of throw in that mix. The director of that movie, one of the actors I know is director of that movie is a Christian. One of the actors in the movie directed a movie called Bella, so he's a known Christian actor. And, Jim Caviezel is a devout Catholic. So there's definitely some Christian push in that movie. It was originally supposed to be distributed by 20th Century Fox, but then Disney bought 20th Century Fox and shelved the movie. So it took forever for the filmmakers to buy back the rights so they could redistribute it through another company. Angel Studios took it. And my God, the film did amazing at the box office. Showed everybody and their mama up, right? So now we have this one, The Blind. And we're starting to see raw vulnerability. We had in Jesus Revolution where we're seeing Christians in real life. Whereas before in a lot of Christian films, Christians were showing themselves the way they want to be seen and not the way they actually are. Well, we got to see Christians the way they actually are in Jesus Revolution. In Nefarious, we got to kind of see the struggle, some of the darker sides of Christianity, the war that many of us have internally between our sin nature and holiness and righteousness. It gave us something, it brought hell to life in a way, that movie did. And then, Sound of Freedom is all about child trafficking, which doesn't shy away from it at all. And now we have The Blind, which focuses on alcoholism. And we really get to see the dirty, ugly, nasty side of alcoholism. Now, the one thing they don't dig too deep into, and I kind of wish they had, were the extramarital affairs that he had. I think the way they kind of alluded to it or maybe showed him, talking to a woman, but didn't really go into depth, I think they kind of got a little cowardly in that respect. I think it would have been very important to kind of take it to that place, to show all of the ways that alcohol can just destroy your life, destroy your inhibitions, destroy your character, destroy your morals, make you into somebody you're not. And they just kind of alluded to it, but they didn't quite go there. So, in terms of this being a Christian movie, the way they did a couple of things really just stood out to me. The fact that they made his conversion point, that moment, they simplified it. They didn't make it this grand, moment of him being on his knees, looking up at the sky, tears in his eyes, his hands out like, God, help me. It was just a moment where he was like, yep. And a lot of times for many people, when they come to know Jesus, the moment isn't grand. It's not this big moment of dramatics. It's simple. It's so simple. And for that individual, it's such a simple moment. But for everyone else who gets to witness it, it's life-changing. I thought that was very real of them. They could have gone the whole Christian movie route and made it extra. They made it normal. They made it simple. They made it ordinary. Because sometimes it's ordinary. It's everything that comes after. Because I think for someone who is not familiar with Christianity and then comes to know Christ, it's ordinary, it's normal, it's simple. It's everything that comes after that's explosive. And that's what we kind of get to see. We get the moment where he comes to the Lord, he gets baptized, and we get to see the beginnings of him making positive changes in his life and him being a present husband. And then at the very end, we get to see him be a present father, which is very important for us because that's what we mostly know Phil as the patriarch, a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather. So I think that moment really was more for us than for Phil. It's something for us to kind of connect to, if that makes sense. So I definitely appreciated the way they made his conversion simple. They made it normal, ordinary. It wasn't climactic. It was just simple. Something else that I appreciated they did, and I alluded to this a bit, where everyone's normal. You know, they didn't try to make Christians look super good and super sweet with smiles of joys on their faces. You know, everyone looks like a first lady, just normal, everyday people. They gave a very honest, there's an honest look to the Christian life in here that it's no different than anyone else's life. It's just lived slightly differently because of Jesus. So I like the normalcy that they give to it, the ordinary, and then the moments of natural dramatics and explosion that's kind of woven in the middle. I think a lot of Christian films just take it a little too far. You know, they want to take how they feel and put it on screen, and it doesn't always work that way, especially when you want to stay away from the artistry of it all. Sometimes when you're making a film and you're trying to push a message that says, "Hey, sin is the wages of death." You got to go to the dark places. And so many Christian films are afraid to go to those dark places and to really shine light on them. So I'm very grateful that this movie wasn't afraid to do that. So, Eunice, this is the part of the podcast where I answer your most burning question. Is this movie appropriate for my child? Now, I've gotten quite a few questions from parents over the last couple of days, mainly parents of boys. Boys between the ages of like 10 and 14. Is this appropriate for my son? This movie is rated PG-13. At some point, I saw someone say this movie is not rated. I don't know where that came from. So just to kind of shed a little bit of light on a not rating. So the rating system from the MPAA, it's voluntary. It's not required. It's optional. You don't have to submit your film for rating. There's no law that says you have to. However, if you have a film that's not rated, it makes it harder for a theater to take it, if that makes sense, because they're gambling. They don't really know what to tell their audience. Whereas when you submit your film for a rating, it gives you a rating and then tells you why it got that rating. Now with The Blind, looking at it immediately, I can't see why it got a PG-13 rating, but I can tell you there is some mild language, nothing, crazy. Obviously it shows alcoholism. It shows Phil going after other women who are not his wife, a little bit of violence, domestic violence, but nothing that leaves any like big bruises or anything like that. But just him being violent in his home, flipping tables, breaking plates, being rough with his wife, like holding her arm or pushing her against the wall, stuff like that. So that's where the PG-13 rating is coming from. And also hunting, right? So gun use, shotguns mainly. So you do see in the beginning ducks getting shot. How real that is, I don't know. I mean, if it's real, it's not, I don't really care. But so you do see that part. I think if you have it's so interesting that the questions that I've been getting have been from mothers of boys. That to me, there's something sweet about that, of moms wanting to show this to their sons. Just this is about a man who is all kinds of imperfect, who started from the bottom, worked his way to the middle, lost everything, and then managed to get to the top. It's a real story. And I think this is something that a lot of men could benefit from, that there is hope, there is redemption. And there's so many movies out here now that when they portray men vulnerable, they portray men as feminine. So I think this movie does a good job of showing men being vulnerable while still being masculine, if that makes sense. Which I think is a balance that a lot of moms are struggling with, is how do I teach my son to be vulnerable, that it's okay to be vulnerable, but it's okay to be masculine at the same time. So I think this movie would do a good job of putting that in their sons' faces and then allowing for conversations afterwards. So that's what I would recommend if you have a son between the ages of 10 and 14, because mainly the questions that I've been getting. This is a good movie, I think, for them to watch, for them to understand that as a man, it's okay to be vulnerable, because this is a man who's putting his whole life on the big screen, the worst moments of his life for the whole world to see, the ultimate show of vulnerability. I think this is a good movie for men to show that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show that you have weaknesses. weaknesses, that you've had dark times, bad times, and that even when you have those dark times, those bad times, you can still be a strong man. These things don't make you weak. They don't take away from your masculinity. That even in the midst of darkness, there is redemption and hope, and that being a strong man, a good father, and a good man of God, it's a journey. It's not instant. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you lose everything. But in Jesus, you can reclaim all that you've lost and some. That's the story of Phil Robertson. Man did some of the worst things that he could have done and managed to not just, regain what he lost, but was blessed with so much more. After the, issues with his, alcoholism, and he came to Jesus, they had one more son together. They all have wives and they all have children, and a couple of them have children of their own. So there are grandchildren. And man was just blessed immensely, not just with this big family, but with this insane business and a platform that he's used to preach the gospel. I think this is a great movie for your sons. For those women out there asking who have boys between the ages of 10 and 14, this is a great movie for your sons. Now, anything younger than that, use discretion. I don't know if it'll mean much to them at that young age, but I know for boys who are, especially boys going through puberty, they're starting to understand what it means to be a man. This is great for them. Highly recommend. Want to advertise on this podcast? Check the episode description to see how you can be featured on the next episode. Thank you for listening to me rant and rave about yet another movie. So that was The Blind, directed by Andrew Hyatt. Just to sum it all up, I thought it was a little weak in some aspects, mainly acting, but I think it's a solid Christian movie, if that makes sense. Overall, it's not a masterpiece, but for a Christian movie, I think it does very well for itself. So I enjoyed it a lot, very much enjoyed it. So what's coming up? So we have a $2 Tuesday coming tomorrow. If you follow me on YouTube, you already have an idea as to what that's going to be. And then this weekend, what is the movie for this weekend? The Exorcist movie comes out this weekend, and that's what I will be seeing. I'm trying to talk myself into watching the original. I've seen it once all the way through. I've said this before, but there are some movies where I'm like, okay, I saw it once, I don't need to see it again. And The Exorcist is on that list, but I want to see it again in preparation for this movie. This movie is supposed to act like a direct sequel, in a sense, some however many decades later, with at least one character returning. So I definitely want to compare and contrast, especially because I'm still mad at this director whose name escapes me. He has one of those triple names, and I am still mad at him for Halloween Ends. So yeah, he better do good. He better do the damn thing. He better kill it. I don't care. Like, you have one shot to impress me, sir, because if this doesn't do it, I'm never giving you another chance again. That's not true. I'll probably see another movie he makes, but I'm still mad at him for Halloween Ends. So I just need him to make this good. That's all. I got my Killers of the Flower Moon ticket. I'm so excited. Oh my goodness, I've already said that, but I'm going to say it again. I can't wait. Oh my goodness. And then the movie that's coming out next week is the Taylor Swift movie. Don't have a ticket for that. However, the plan is to see Hunger Games. And that movie is supposed to be re-released into theaters next weekend in preparation for the new Hunger Games prequel coming out in November. I need y'all to hold me accountable. I am trying to read the entire book. It's The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes before the movie comes out, but I have not watched the trailer. I refuse to watch the trailer until I can read the whole book. That is the goal. So hold me accountable, y'all. And my hope is to do like a video trailer review on YouTube. That's the thing I want to do. I really want to do it. So say a prayer for me that I can just get over these sinus issues and get back to normal life. I hope y'all have an amazing October. Let me know what you're doing for Halloween, or if you even celebrate Halloween. If you're one of those people, you have like a fall thing at your church, what do y'all do? Every church does something different. I'm always curious. I really don't pay much attention to what my church does because I don't have kids. So unless there's ice cream, I typically don't attend. I know that's shallow, but I love ice cream. So there's that. But in the meantime, I love y'all. You're amazing. Let me know what you thought of the movie if you were able to see it this weekend, and I will see you next time.